Reflecting on past experiences, thinking about the future, and planning to improve the situation are essential parts of human life. Any strategy for development at the grassroots level has to consider the experiences of communities in planning and action. Participatory rural appraisal methods are applied within the framework of project cycle management to strengthen the participation of communities in all phases of the development project. The ultimate goal of such a participatory project cycle management, PPCM, is to strengthen self-help potential of rural communities. The principles of PPCM ensure the blending of the knowledge, experiences and potentials of local people with the views and expertise of government officials, NGO workers, as well as international partners. PPCM is based on 8 guiding principles: participation of all stakeholders, dialogical communication, sequential process, systemic analysis, cyclic process, cross-cultural sensitivity, consensus orientation, and transparency. The project cycle starts with the project idea, which has to be translated into agreed-upon project objectives on the basis of which a project plan is elaborated. The implementation of this plan leads to the achievement of the project purpose and development goal. The 3 main phases of the project cycle are the identification phase, the conceptualization phase, and the implementation phase. PPCM supports a systematic application of a wide variety of tools and instruments to facilitate participation of all stakeholders. The selection of the appropriate tools is not predefined by the PPCM concept, it is based on the actual conditions. PPCM organizes the planning and decision-making process in a cyclic way. The results and processes of the different planning steps are carefully monitored and used for flexible planning. The following video is a documentation of an international training program on participatory project cycle management. The training was organized by the Asian Productivity Organization, APO, in collaboration with the Center on Integrated Rural Development for Asia and the Pacific, CIRDAP, in Digolgaon village in Bangladesh. The participants came from APO member countries, Republic of China, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Iran, Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. They had the opportunity to learn the basic principles and tools of PPCM through an intensive interaction with the villagers. The training process on PPCM organizes learning in a cyclic way. Important elements of the training are theoretical inputs, close interactions with the villagers, documentation and systematic processing of information generated through interaction with the villagers, critical reflection among participants, and validation of information through feedback sessions with the villagers. Such an interactive learning process is essentially dialogical and cyclic. The PPCM training consisted of the following 12 steps. Step 1. Rapport building. Step 2. Preparation for the situation analysis. Step 3. Situation analysis. Step 4. Documentation and reflection. Step 5. Feedback and validation. Step 6. Problem identification and prioritization. Step 7. Problem analysis. Step 8. Documentation and reflection. Step 9. Feedback and validation. Step 10. Mutual agreement on the development goal. Step 11. Project Planning Matrix, PPM. Step 12. Final feedback and validation. Meeting the members of the society, joining villagers in their routine activities such as rice transplanting, as well as sitting with the villagers to enjoy a cup of tea, were the initial activities used by the participants to build rapport and establish relationships with the villagers. The participants discuss the communication tools and important principles which enable a dialogue before rushing directly into the situation analysis. The topics for discussion with the villagers for the following days were identified on the basis of earlier interactions with the villagers and previous personal experiences of the participants in the field of community development. The participants of the training joined together in small groups and applied several communication and planning tools to achieve a mutual understanding of the situation with the people of Dighongaon, such as semi-structured interviews, key informant interviews, classification exercise, mapping, transect, ranking, seasonal diagram, daily routine, timeline, and vision drawing. Such tools are useful in enabling the village community to express its often implicit and unspoken knowledge in a way that can be jointly discussed and reflected by all those involved in the planning process. Reflecting about the communication and interaction process with the community helps to understand each other's biases. Intensive discussion and dialogue lead to critical validation of the data generated and help to reach a consensus about the situation, the problems, and the ways to tackle the problems. Participatory mapping is one of the most versatile and powerful tools in generating visual presentation on any aspect of the physical reality. Mapping reveals people's perception of resources and a fair understanding of the area of the village. Here, the map was used to depict infrastructure like canals, roads, electricity lines, natural resources, and settlement patterns. Mapping helps to improve rapport between outsiders and the villagers by allowing villagers to become main actors from the very beginning of the situation analysis. The villagers lead the process and the outsiders follow by observing and listening. The villagers and outsiders walked together along a transect route selected as appropriate for the topic. In this case, the route was selected to learn more about the achievements of the community in improving its livelihood. Sanitary facilities, hand pumps, and irrigation systems were some of the successful innovations visited and discussed during the transect. Transect walks allowed the participants to meet different groups of villagers who may be hesitant to visit official meetings. Anybody can spontaneously join the Transact group and share his or her views. The discussion on the spot makes it easier to understand each other. The analysis of livelihood and production systems often reveal a close relationship between seasons and production, as well as the consumption patterns of the people, the need for money or healthcare facilities. A seasonal calendar of the cropping pattern is helpful in identifying periods of under or unemployment, food scarcity, and availability of money. The classification exercise is a tool to understand the ways people group a variety of items while at the same time reveal people's criteria and principles of classification. Villagers often have their own classification system of plants, soils, food items, seeds, etc., which is difficult for outsiders to realize without such an exercise. With classification exercise, outsiders may find the unexpected utilization or function of an item by villagers. A dialogue about this different classification is an important step in understanding each other. In this training, the village women classified food items according to one of their routine activities, cooking meals. However, there are many different possibilities for classifying food items, for example, according to nutritional values, price, and availability during different seasons. Later, the communication process turned into a conversation. Specific questions were raised and answers were discussed to understand how the women use food items to solve specific problems they face. The women explained which food items are good for lactating mothers and which food items are regarded as helpful in cases of diarrhea among children.
When was the village established?
After analyzing the present situation, the village history was discussed using a timeline. Some important changes, events, and achievements of the past were remembered, discussed, and visualized in a chart. This helped to jointly understand the development of the village over time, the roots of the present situation, and the role of government and non-government organizations.
When we sent the first students from our primary school to secondary school.
The discussion with the villagers focused here on the social and technological innovations and the history of cooperation, which helped to solve problems successfully in the past. Key informant interviews with elderly people were useful in examining past events in detail.
The major purpose of this exercise is for you and us, we work together to put in paper our visions about tomorrow, about the future, maybe 5 years or 10 years or 20 years from now.
After analyzing the present and the past conditions of the village, the focus was on developing visions for the future. Vision drawing encourages people to think about their future. The different groups in the village, the elderly, women, youth, unemployed, educated and uneducated, visualized their often unspoken dreams and visions about what should happen to make their life happier. The villagers developed plenty of ideas about how they would like to see their livelihood in 10 or 20 years.
TNT, chicken farm, cottage industry.
Yes.
Okay. Tinta.
The villagers were then asked to explain their ideas using their pictures. The dreams and visions of the different groups were taken seriously and discussed openly.
গ্রাম থেকে মানে এই এলাকা ভালো কোনো ডাক্তার নাই এইজন্য একটা হাসপাতাল চাই হাসপাতাল সাথে সাথে একটা বিনোদন কেন্দ্র চাই
বিনোদন কেন্দ্র দরকার কারণ ছেলেরা খেলার জন্য তাদের বড় একটা ক্রিকেট মাঠ দরকার যাতে ভালোভাবে খেলতে পারে
আমরা মেয়েরা প্রায় 3 হতে 4 মাইল দূরে যে লেখাপড়া করা আমাদের জন্য সমস্যা পড়তে হয় সমস্যা পড়াতে আমাদের গার্ডিয়ানরা আমাদেরকে অনেক দূরে যেতে দেয় না, তাই আমাদের গ্রামে একটা উচ্চ বিদ্যালয়ের খুবই দরকার।
After that, they identified dreams which can become realistic visions that can be a driving force for action. The data and the information generated through interactions with the villagers about the past, present, and future situation were documented and processed for the next planning steps. The presentation and discussion among participants of the training program was the first step towards overcoming one's biases, preconceived ideas, and superficial understanding of the situation. They not only revealed important aspects and commonalities, but also contradictions and missing aspects of the first interactions with the villagers. The necessity for feedback and continuous interactions with the community becomes clear. Such discussions are also important in reflecting one's own prejudices about rural communities and sharpening the ability to communicate with the villagers in a dialogical way. The information jointly documented and discussed by the participants was shared in a feedback session with the community. Asking questions, reflecting on answers, and correcting the visualized information were the main features of the first validation session. This way, the understanding of the situation is constantly growing. The learning cycle with the villagers started with rapport building, continued with preparation activities, situation analysis, documentation and reflection, and ended with feedback and validation with the community. The feedback and validation prepared the basis for the next learning cycle. From the first validated information and open group discussions, important problem areas of the community were identified. By applying the tool of pairwise ranking, the problem areas were prioritized and elaborated. Discussions revealed criteria used by the villagers to rank their problems. The problem tree is a useful instrument for analyzing identified problems. This tool enables a systematic analysis of the cause and effect relationships of problems. Such a systematic analysis is an important step for developing strategies for solving problems. The sharing of different views of outsiders and villagers deepens the understanding of the situation and enriches such problem analysis. If necessary, the different aspects of a problem area can be further elaborated through focus interviews. The results of the identification of problem areas and analysis were again documented and discussed. The findings were integrated and visualized for the second feedback validation session with the villagers. The outcome of the joint problem identification and analysis was again shared with the community. Taking the socio-cultural condition of Dighol into consideration, the meetings for men and women were organized in separate locations. With a group of men, the results of the problem analysis were openly discussed at the school. Changes, as proposed by the villagers, were immediately corrected during the meeting. At the same time, women gathered in a suitable location and critically discussed the documentation of the results. Their feedback and corrections revealed clearly that continuous validation was an essential part of good planning. The open communication process and the acknowledgement of further suggestions by members of the community helped to achieve a mutual understanding of the situation. Based on the understanding of the situation in general and the problems in particular, a more intense communication process with representatives of the village community is carried out in order to collect and analyze ideas on how to solve the problems. The problem objectives matrix is applied for this purpose. This step is completed once all the parties have agreed on the overall goal, the development goal, the project purpose, and the project outputs and results. After clarifying alternative options for achieving the project purpose by applying, for example, alternative analysis, and by deciding on one option to pursue, the implementation strategy is elaborated. All important information and decisions are structured according to a planning format called Project Planning Matrix, PPM. The PPM provides a narrative summary of all relevant information about the project, such as the overall goal, development goal, project purpose, outputs and activities. In addition, indicators, sources of verification, and important assumptions are described. The PPM lays the foundation for managing and monitoring the project. In an intensive communication process, all parts of the PPM are worked out and visualized on a big poster to be shared with the community during the last village meeting. The PPM was validated during a final session with the village community. The participants of the training course presented the PPM, which was then critically reviewed by the villagers. In the meeting, the PPM was considered useful for the next activities of the village community for improving the situation. However, the main outcome of the process is not only the project planning matrix, but more importantly, the start of joint planning and mutual learning among villagers to improve the situation.
What we have learned in the advanced seminar on planning method for integrated local community development is the basic knowledge and skills of PPCM principles and every project we want to undergo in the community. One significant contribution of PPCM principles is to solicit participation of all the villagers in the community.
We are indeed challenged with the information that we have learned with regards to PRA and PPCM. For me, as a person, I'm challenged in the sense that I would be able to share this knowledge to the students that I teach at the Fiji School of Medicine.
বাইরের লোক আইছেন আপনারা আমরা দেখলাম আমরাও আপনারা দেখলেন তো মনে করেন অভিজ্ঞান বাড়লো কথা হাতি করলাম সাহস লাগলো আমরা কত আপনারা শুনলেন আমরা কত আমরা শুনলাম
The experiences with PPCM reveal that tools and methods for planning with the local communities have to be adapted to the specific socio-economic and cultural conditions of the community. In participatory project cycle management, the interactions between planners and village communities are organized as a systematic and joint learning process. The path leading to participatory planning is long and winding, and the journey has only just begun. One can be sure that the future will reveal new and unknown dimensions of this journey.